Ah,
Do you want us to start?
yeah.
Okay, great.
Hi everyone.
Hello.
Welcome to the last session of what has been an amazing conference. It's been so fantastic to be here to meet everybody, and we have got an amazing session to send you out on as well. So we're here today to talk about building digital capacity. I'm very, very pleased to be joined by Mark Surman, who's Executive Director of Mozilla. And my name is Josie Fraser. I'm an educational technologist.
Thank you, Josie. Before I kind of take you into the session, how many people feel like they've been sitting for 2 days? Just a little poll. The rest of you haven't been sitting for 2 days. Okay, well, we're going to try to get you to not sit for this last session. So I know when I've been sitting for 2 days, it's a little intense. And so we will explain this exciting piece of technology on the floor momentarily. But before we do that, just to set up our conversation, both of us are passionate about the idea of digital literacy. If you saw my talk this morning, I said a little bit more about that. And want to begin with the assertion that digital literacy, or whatever you want to call it, there's lots of equivalent phrases, is as important as reading, writing, and math. And that we're at an era, especially if you saw the end of Philip's talk, where understanding how the digital world works is actually tremendously important, not only in terms of learning, in terms of work, but also as a citizen. So we want to explore some of those themes together over the course of the next hour. But maybe you want to say a little bit about why it matters to you.
Okay, so I've been working for my career as an educational technologist with learning communities of all different kinds. Most recently, I've been working with school communities, but I've been fortunate enough to work with a lot of universities and FE as well. I'm very passionate about how we ensure that the communities and the learning opportunities that we provide for our young people and for learners in general actually equip them to cope and thrive and survive in the world. As you said, there is, within digital societies, there's a basic level of digital literacy that you actually need to navigate the world around you and to get the most out of the world around you. And not just so that you can actually access the resources and the opportunities that are available to you, but so you can actually create those opportunities, make connections, build communities, and go forward. I believe that we really need to support every single learner in relation to that, and make sure that we're not disadvantaging learners by providing an education that doesn't recognise the critical role that digital literacy now plays.
I couldn't agree more. I would just add that for me, and I think for Mozilla, there's a piece that really is also about how big the stakes are, that we look at digital literacy for absolutely everyone. And a bit of why we have started to talk about digital literacy as a core part of what we talk about as internet health and a core priority of Mozilla is that, at the root of our mission is this idea that we can shape the digital society to have the kind of values that the internet was founded on. It's something open and something that belongs to all of us. And that, the mythology and actually the truth of Firefox, I wasn't there at the time, so I can make grand statements of being impressed by the people who founded Mozilla, is that it was able, with a software product, to shift the balance from Microsoft trying to take over the internet and pull it into Windows to bringing the web back as a universal platform for computing. And it did that by putting out a piece of software with a set of values that got popular with people, that had standards in it, and really did shift things and put them on a different trajectory. We're at a spot now with the internet where I certainly think we're at risk of being on the wrong trajectory. Decentralization, monopolies, a huge crisis in security, growing inequities. And the thing that we've kind of come to as an organization is, even if others can find the right technologies that decentralize, the right technologies with the right values, the right products, it will not be enough. And so if you think about, I think of open source often as being like the conservation movement. Very, very successful in creating big national parks in many parts of the Western world in the early part of the 20th century. It didn't stop pollution. It didn't stop a hole in the ozone layer. We're now at that same spot where we need a second wave of what the open source movement started, and it does have to start with people. It does have to start with their knowledge. It does have to have digital citizens at the heart of it. And so for me, digital literacy isn't just a subject in school. It is really something that will determine the fate of our digital society and ultimately where all of us end up. So I think it's kind of important. So with that, I guess we're going to see if you agree. And what we're going to do is, in a moment, just to be safe, don't do this yet, we're going to deploy this incredibly sophisticated piece of analog opinion measurement technology. This is what we call a spectrogram, and it's very, very simple. We will make a categorical statement. If we have designed the categorical statement properly, you will strongly agree, strongly disagree, or be very confused and ambivalent. You will then move your body to express your reaction to that categorical statement. So if you strongly agree, you'll go to the yes. If you strongly disagree, you will go to the no. If you don't really know where you stand, you will go to the middle. At which point, we will come and talk to people at different parts of the opinion measurement spectrum and ask why you're standing where you're standing. Now, here's the tricky part. If somebody somewhere else on the line says something convincing to you but different than what you thought, you can move your body along the line. So those are basically the rules. By the end, we will know a lot more about what we think about digital literacy and how to tackle it as educators and as a society. So before we start, just to make sure that we all know how to operate the machine, I have 3 volunteers who are going to help me just demonstrate the machine. If I can have my 3 volunteers here at the center of the line, just stand at the center of the line. No, I'll stand at the center, Philip, so you can show sort of how it works. Don't give away your position. Oh. So here is the statement. Folks, the weather in Berlin is awesome. The weather in Berlin is awesome. Oh my God, these people can't agree on anything. Let me just find out why they're there. You're so against the weather in Berlin and you're German. Why?
Well, I'm from Cologne, and so everything in Berlin is terrible, including the weather.
I see. Well, let me just see. The British over here may have a different opinion, and I can guess why.
Hi. Well, at the moment in Britain, it's raining monkeys. Here, the weather's beautiful. The sky is blue. The bluebirds are out and singing. It's like walking in a wonderland of joy.
All right. The British are happy to be in Berlin. They may never leave. Now you can't. Well, you're a little towards yes.
Yes, because it's not 25 degrees constantly, but it's also not too much in minuses. So I'm kind of not too happy, but it's not too bad.
Excellent. Give a round of applause to our demo team. All right. So we're going to now deploy this for real. So if everybody can either leave the room, as these people are doing, or stand up and join us on the line. So there are no spectators in this sport. Please come and join us, and we will start with our first statement. Do you want to read the first statement?
Yeah, I'll read the first statement, and then am I doing yes or no's? Who's doing?
Pardon?
Am I doing yes?
Oh, we'll just run.
Okay.
But just say it slowly, repeat it, make it really clear.
Okay, so
let's go.
Let's go.
You cannot have an opinion back there behind the chairs.
Everybody has an opinion.
So if you're behind where I am, you're in the wrong spot. I do have a fetish for standing on chairs. Come on, those folks who are clustered in the middle, create some more space for these other folks.
Let's have a look. You can do your emails later.
All right, we're almost ready. So do we have a first statement?
We do. So our first statement is the best people to teach digital literacy are students. Okay, and we've got yes, strongly agree on this side, and we've got no, strongly disagree on that side, and we've got somewhere in the middle.
The best people to teach digital literacy are students. Nobody is in the complete yes. Oh, wait, we may have some takers. Oh, no. Oh, the best people to teach digital literacy are students. Oh, we're getting some good clustering here. All right, so we got a majority towards no, my rule of thumb in this is always to go to the person who is farthest in the minority. So why do you think the best?
Because they are used to do this in the normal life.
All right.
Yes.
Can you say why you're down here?
The same.
The same?
Yeah, same.
Anybody who has a different reason that students are used to using it in their normal life?
Well, I think a more nuanced reason. The teachers need to be involved, but the kids need to be the ones that drive it.
Okay, great. Anybody have a different opinion down here? Why they're down here? Felix, you look thoughtful.
I think to them, a lot of it is intuitive, whereas the instructors, the professionals, have to learn it more rationally, with effort. And so I don't think they're the best, but they are among the best to teach.
Okay, great. Maybe you can get the people on the far no end of the spectrum.
Okay, so I think you're actually right at the back here in terms of no, students aren't the best people to teach digital literacy. So what are your reasons?
I think old people also can be good in knowing what is wrong and what is right, and to find out their sources.
So it's not an age-specific thing?
No.
Okay, and can I ask you?
I have a course in the university called Digital Literacy, and the students don't know anything about it. So that's why it depends on what you mean with digital literacy also.
Okay, thank
So
you.
your argument is you're a teacher, so you can't be down there. Yeah. Okay, good. I feel like I'm in a Woody Allen movie and you're McLuhan. Or no, I'm McLuhan.
Can I ask
Anyways,
you why you
go
think
on.
learners shouldn't be the ones to be leading on teaching digital literacy?
Because learners, many of them, are not digitally literate themselves. They use 3 apps to death. They know how to type quickly, but they are digitally illiterate, basically. That's the reason.
Anybody got any other opinions? Shall we maybe walk a little bit to the centre?
I think that it's not enough to be intuitive. I think that you have to have a kind of teacher's framework of how to approach things, how to teach, teaching strategies, all those things that we teachers do that children do not have.
So maybe it's something
So,
about
and the
critical
experience
skills.
that we have.
Yes, an experience certainly.
Yes.
So we haven't had any moving down here. Let's see if people in the middle will help move in either direction.
I'm just going to ask this lady here because she's quite keen to
Oh, right.
share quickly.
Also, just to add, because we don't expect our children to be born with moral standards and with ethical thinking, so why do we expect them to be able to do so just because they have some kind of device in their hand?
Interesting point.
Good point. Do people have strong opinions here in the middle about why you're in the middle?
I'm in the middle because I think it's not a question of students teaching us or us teaching students. It's a kind of dialogue thing, and it's not a teaching thing. It's actually a discovery thing that we have to find out together. That's why I'm in the middle, because it goes both ways.
Awesome point.
I'd say the same thing. I say you can say they're intuitive and then they can teach us things, but obviously they need a lot more guidance, so we need to teach them as well.
All right.
For me, it's based on their background. It doesn't matter whether the teacher or the student. It's how they exposed to the digital world. So both can combine the idea to teach each other.
Okay, awesome. Anybody else here in the middle?
Hi. I'm also just thinking about what we're using the digital literacy for, because teachers use it in one way and students use it in another way, and then we can supplement each other in the process.
Awesome. Anybody else who hasn't had a chance to talk want to jump in on this topic on either end? Or anybody's opinion been... Nobody has moved, which either means this group is tired from being at a conference.
We've got a mover.
And what moved you?
I think I was persuaded by the dialogue thing.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else want to add in before we go to the next one?
It probably also depends a little bit on how we define digital skills. I teach university students. They know much better than how to use certain technologies than the teachers do, but they might not actually know the full scope of what the digital literacy they should have is. So it depends on your definition of digital literacy as well.
Fantastic, excellent point there.
Anybody else? I really want to jump in myself, but we will do that at the end as we get back to the talk. Okay, what's our next statement? Do you have our button? Teachers who won't improve their digital literacy should be fired.
Okay, so if you're for firing,
Yes or no?
you want to be over here.
Teachers who will not improve their digital literacy should be fired.
And if you're against us just firing them, you want to be over
In the middle,
here.
yeah, you could have a slightly more lenient perspective. There's only
This one's
one
no.
person
This
all
one's
the way
don't
on no.
fire. This one's yes. Do fire.
All right. Well, I will go with my rule, which is the most minority extreme opinion. You are completely against firing teachers, so you're from the teachers union of what country?
In fact, I am artificial intelligence researcher, and I'm partially replacing teacher by artificial intelligence. But we shouldn't replace those who don't want to be replaced by other teachers or learn something new. Well, there are a lot of room for teachers with poor digital literacy if they are in other way qualified.
Okay. Other people who are a little bit more on the edge here.
Well, I think that we need to kind of think that digital literacy is great, and professors and teachers who use technology is great for teaching, but some teachers can be brilliant teachers without knowing how to use an app. So I think we have to kind of, embrace kind of the difference among teachers. And
Okay.
I think if you fire them, you make the problem worse. So what you should do is you should, help, again, through a dialogue model, help educate the teachers so they become digitally literate and make that part of an objective that they have to achieve. Because, they have to be digitally literate to function in their profession, absolutely. But by just firing them, we're already facing a shortage of teachers. You're keeping them misinformed. You're not actually helping the teacher getting better at what they do. So firing, I think, is a bit of a radical solution that makes the problem worse.
Okay.
Yeah.
I recently saw a film. It was called I, Daniel Blake. I don't know if anybody's seen that. Anyway, this was a person who had a heart attack and had to be out of a job. And he had to use online, forms in order to get his disability, something, in order not to work. And he was just like a magnificent, really nice person, but couldn't use that online, digital, devices and things. That doesn't make you any worse just because you can't use it. I mean, there are other things that you can give to society, even if you're not using the digital world. That's my opinion.
Okay, great. So let's hear from the Hatchet Squad down there.
Okay, so you seem to be of the strongest opinion.
Well, thank you. I think I agree about embracing all kind of things. If you are a psychologist, you don't necessarily need to learn so much about digital
We can't hear you.
Well, yes, I think I agree about the lady that said that we have to embrace all kind of difference.
So why are you down there, sir?
Well, it's a nice place to be for the moment.
You just like firing people.
Yes.
Okay. Can I ask you why you're down this side?
I'm not going to go for any nuanced argument at all. So I think we're preparing children for their future, not our future. Their future is digital. You need to get digital in order to prepare them for their future.
Okay, very, very straight, clean lined argument.
A few more down there.
Okay, if I look at for that word, it just improve. It doesn't mean that you have to be expert. So at least you should know something about the digital literacy to improve your knowledge.
So maybe that's more about sacking them if they're not prepared to learn on the job.
Yeah, sure. It is a continuous
digital
learning. It is a future need. So at least you have some sort of information regarding literature literacy. It doesn't mean you have to be expert in that area.
Anyone else got a strong opinion?
I will use an analogy. I would say that a teacher without digital literacy is a kind of river without water. You cannot have trees in a forest where there is no river, and it is a consequence at the end that they will end paying because, as he said, the digital is the future, and they cannot afford not having this.
All right, let's find some folks here in the middle. You, sir, ignoring us on your smartphone.
Oh, yeah.
Either of you. Why do you stand in the middle?
Because we don't know the answer.
Oh, good. Sir.
Well, I think that teachers who won't improve the digital literacy should be fired.
Well, then why are you not down there?
Well, I thought that this was the
No,
line.
this is the middle. This is your equivocating. If you have a strong opinion, move your body down there. Anybody else in the middle before we go to our last question? Yeah.
I think it depends a lot on how you phrased it. You phrased it that they should be fired. I think teachers should absolutely be encouraged to improve their digital literacy, but to say they should be fired is a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
So more
the design
carrot,
of the exercise.
More carrot, less stick.
That's why I'm here.
Anybody else down here in the middle? Oh, we got some three quarters of the way.
Right. I guess it's a question of students or teachers who don't want to make the effort to improve. Why is it they don't want to make that effort? Is it fear? Is it because they're not supported? Because if there's a support system, if there's a welcoming environment, there's no reason really for them not to want to at least improve.
Good point. I think we'll pick on that from some of what you've done and your past work.
Definitely.
I think it's important to define the digital literacy because a lot of the points here are some understand it as the functional thing. How does this app function? But understanding the concept and the consequences and the ethical issues is another thing. And in that sense, you can have really old and wise teachers who don't use any technological devices themselves that can still teach the students a lot.
Okay, great. Sir.
There was another session that was saying AI will replace all the teachers. So anyway, like whether you improve or not, it could be fired anyway.
So you're in the middle because it doesn't matter. Yeah. All right. But don't you think the teachers should be organizing the anti-robot army? Okay, one more on this. Anybody else? Okay. Sir.
I think there's a problem with literacy here. There's also a conceptual literacy that we seem to be avoiding here, and it's pointless being digitally literate if you're conceptually less literate. And I think I work with young people, and that's definitely noticeable. That someone needs to teach them to think and reason, weigh up evidence, be more reasonable people, and that's where that will be provided by the teachers, not by other young people.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So let's go to our last one. Do you have the clicker still? Do you want to read it?
Governments should allocate as much funding for digital literacy as they do for maths. Okay, so we spend a lot, most governments in the world spend a large time investing in developing maths teachers, creating resources, ensuring that their population has basic mathematical skills. Do you think that we need to weight digital literacy as an area as much as we're weighting currently maths? So if you agree, over here, and if you don't agree, over here.
Yes. Yes is there. Disagree is over there. This dude is just, he loves this end. Although you've moved a little bit. Oh, wait. Oh. No, I didn't say you need to move a little bit. You're a little bit further than you were there with the firing.
No.
So why are you again at the end of this?
This time I'm not that critical, but I would say without good maths, you miss, well, maybe not more than missing digital literacy. But I would say that maths is a background for quite many things, and I'm only here to get to speak.
Okay, excellent. I love your transparency.
I don't think governments allocate sufficient funds for math, so they should allocate substantially more to digital literacy and to math than they currently do.
Brilliant answer.
I love your point. Nitpicking with the phrase, but good. Down. You want to get down there?
So, can I ask why you're here?
I actually debated, but seeing as, well, I'm from Denmark, and our entire relationship between the public sector, which is quite large, and the individual is becoming digital. And that's also a part of our understanding of digital literacy, that you have to be able to conduct yourself in all the relations to the public sector as well. So it becomes increasingly important that we are dealing with it, but it should be even more.
Okay, thank you.
I was going to say that the statement does not imply that if you're going to fund digital literacy more means that you're going to, not fund the math. I'm just saying that both of them should be funded equally. And in fact, the digital literacy is the fourth R, or whatever you want to call it.
Thank you very much.
Anybody in the middle here?
I
Not
actually
quite
think,
the middle.
not quite the middle, yeah. But picking up the argument, I think digital literacy needs much more funding now because we have to retrofit. It's not just teaching new teachers how to teach those skills, but it's about educating all the educators that we have in positions now to be able to teach it. So I think it needs much more funding as an incentive and sort of push forward now.
So you're on this because you're more than math as opposed to, okay, interesting.
I think it's a quite silly question, because why is it only digital literacy and math? Why is it not education in total that should be allocated and funded more? Because that is our future. So I'm in the middle because I don't agree with the question.
That happens every time we do this exercise. Anybody else in the middle? Philip.
Well, I think I struggle a little bit with the split between digital literacy and math, because I don't know if it makes sense to put them into two different buckets. Maybe there are ways of learning both of them together in some new way where we don't have to take a digital literacy class and then we go to math class. But both should be funded equally.
All right. Anybody else? Well, I'm here in the middle. Anybody on that end? The bald man with the beard always have opinions.
I think we shouldn't emphasize, it's a false dichotomy, because I think we need to know a bit of maths, but certainly not as much maths as we have. Digital literacy shouldn't take primacy over other things that should become more naturalistic as part of other subjects. But I'd like to throw in, especially after the reference to Daniel Blake, real life literacy. So I'd like to think that digital literacy and maths shouldn't even, which are both, one's very abstract, one's very much about immediate problem solving. We should have authentic real life literacy as well.
All right, cool. Do you have anybody more on your end?
They're slightly shy on my end.
All right. Well, this was meant to be the last question. I do have a potential bonus question that we will be very brief on, which is, how many people were here during the end of Philip's talk when we had Donald Trump up on the screen? Just a show of hands. No? Okay. Well, so I'm going to take that as enough and say, well, I'll just actually say the statement is digital literacy is dramatically more important now than it was a year ago or a month ago. Strongly agree or strongly disagree. Digital literacy is more important now, dramatically more important now than it was a year ago or a month ago.
So have things radically changed over the last year in terms of how critical it is now to have basic or even more advanced digital literacy skills? Oh, we've got
Nobody thinks it's the same.
Well, no, the same people.
So
kind of
no
in the
means
middle.
it hasn't changed at all. So this means it's changed a little, and this means it's changed a lot.
Yeah.
So digital literacy is dramatically more important now than it was a month ago.
So if you think
this is just a little more important. It's just a lot more
a lot
important.
more important, exactly the same as it was a year ago. So if you think the global political shift has impacted on how important digital literacy is for people, you want to be over here. If you think actually the landscape is pretty much the same and digital literacy is as important as it was a year ago, you want to be over here. And if not, you're in the middle. Okay.
Do you want to do the no end?
Yeah.
Because I've been always down there with the no.
Okay, so Mr. No.
I think it's equally important, it's just now it's visible that it's important. It was just as important a year ago, 2 years ago, 4 years ago, but now we just know how important it was and is. So it's not more important, it's just visible.
That's a good answer. Has anybody got a slightly different answer to that one?
I think it just, if you think that Brexit, for example, was bad, then now you think, oh, the digital literacy was so important because now, something bad happened. So it depends on your political views. I mean, for people who support Brexit, they think that, yeah, everybody was literate and did the right choice.
Those people also support less digital literacy, but.
So we're standing next to each other, but I totally disagree with you. Because I think the digital literacy is about people making informed decisions. And if they make an informed decision for the Brexit, then that's fine, but they shouldn't make that decision because they're not informed.
And how do we know? How do we know if they were informed or not?
Good question, but in the US, there are a lot, maybe that's a more clear-cut case, but there are lots of questions about basic science, and you can ask people about their beliefs, and it's obvious that the factual answers are not correct.
So let's try down here. You, again, are down at this extreme end. You think it's more important than it was?
Well, I completely agree with what the first gentleman said, but I would like to add, though nothing has changed, it has become so evident, more evident than ever, how important, especially critical thinking, which is one of the very important skills within digital literacy, has become. I think yeah. Well, so although I agree and nothing has changed, it has become evident that it has to be addressed.
Great, thank you.
I'm going to say that it's just that it has bubbled to the surface more than ever that we do need it. I mean, it may have been the same, I don't know, but there's a lot of evidence that it certainly is needed. So I would go on with the statement.
Cool. Anybody got a different answer at this end?
Just to kind of add on that, I was thinking more about the increase in fake news. So that's kind of why I'm more on this end, and that has particularly been in the last month or so.
Great. Anybody else down here? Yes, please.
I think the fact that a year ago, even though it may have been accurate to say we were in a post-truth society, the fact that people are willing to accept the expression post-truth nowadays points towards a need for digital literacy.
Awesome.
I think also pre these seismic events in the world, we had a lot of assumptions about how people thought about certain things. You assume that people could think in a certain way, and it sort of made us question our assumptions on how people actually deal with all this news. And
awesome. Great. Any more down on that end?
Do we want somebody from the middle? Would you like to voice your opinion?
Your question was a bit too binary, because I think it's a much more holistic thing that needs to be looked at. Yes, I totally agree, we need the digital literacy skills, but actually they were as important yesterday as they are tomorrow and the day after and the day after. But actually, unless they're being considered in a more overall and a holistic way, there's maybe no point about talking about them.
Yep. So I think we'll wrap up from this phase of the conversation. Give yourselves a huge round of applause. And if you want to grab your seats, what we're going to just do is take 10 minutes to reflect back on some of that. And I guess while you're grabbing your seat, I'll throw it out to folks there who remain in the audience at this late date in the conference. Does anybody have a reflection from that whole conversation that you would want to share back with the group? And then we'll share ours and then wrap up.
Hello? If you remove the term digital from all your questions, will your answers change?
That's a question to the group. Anybody else have any reflections on that whole conversation you want to throw in? All right. Well, I think it might be interesting if we go back into the middle part of it, some of the 6 years you spent building out a whole digital program, bringing
60 years.
6.
All right. I've aged very well.
Indeed. So I don't know if you want to talk about some of the challenges we went through your experience kind of rolling out a big digital program in a city.
I do. But before I go on to that, I just want to talk about something that came up a few times for everybody. So quite a few times in that discussion, what you were saying to us was, well, actually, it depends on what digital literacy means and what you actually mean by that. And it's very difficult to answer the question without an engagement with that. So there have been so many definitions of digital literacy that have come out over the last 10 years or so. And some are I think some are more useful than other ones. The definition that I tend to use is critical thinking plus technological skills plus social participation. And I think the social participation piece is really, really important in terms of it's not just about being able to go online and fill in forms, it's actually about being able to connect and to collaborate and to communicate with others. JISC have got a very interesting definition in the UK, and they basically say digital literacy is what you need to function in digital society. So it's very, very open-ended and broad, and there are benefits to kind of keeping that conversation at that kind of level and keeping it that broad. One of the things that I have been doing with teachers in England is looking at what digital literacy actually means to those staff. So while I have a kind of a shorthand version of what digital literacy is, I very, very firmly believe that digital literacy and the priorities around digital literacy depends on your position. So my position as a citizen, I have kind of key digital literacies that I need to do to be able to function and be able to engage economically, socially, culturally within digital society. This framework was developed with secondary school teachers, so that's teachers teaching young people from the age of 11 to 18, and also SEN teachers, so teachers working with children with special education needs from kind of mild dyslexia, mild learning difficulties, right through to working with young people with severe and life-limiting disabilities. And this is what they came up with, working with me and with the Montfort University in relation to what was important to them. So one of the things I think in terms of this is that this is the kind of, it's not necessarily what's in the model, although for a lot of people, things will be very similar. So, for example, communication, collaboration, and participation, you can imagine very few groups of people in the world that won't be a priority and a really important area for. But actually, I think it's about this, where the digital literacy is situated and how it responds to the needs of the community that it's situated in.
Yeah, and we maybe unsurprisingly, everybody does have their own definition. We spent a lot of time doing comparative research on different definitions. And there's a bunch you can go read on learning.mozilla.org about this. And for us, the definition is similar to yours, to be able to read, write, and participate. And so really there is that consumption, including critical thinking or kind of engaging with information literacy. There's a piece around productivity and creation and being able to express yourself, and a piece on the social part. So I think anytime I would or we would be talking about digital literacy, it's got a bunch of those dimensions. So do you want to say anything, just because we talked a little bit about the role of students and then whether we should fire the teachers? I don't think you fired any teachers for failing to...
No, we actually worked quite closely with the teaching unions in my project, so that wasn't on the cards ever. And obviously, I think somebody mentioned a range of the reasons why staff may not be able to get involved in it. And we have to remember the kind of human element of all this. So some staff are genuinely terrified of using technology. Some staff have had really, really bad experiences with use of technology before. Some staff have had no opportunity or allowance made for them. And I'm thinking particularly of staff that are on very short-term contracts that are only getting paid for the time that they spend in the classroom, who have no kind of framework of staff development or support around them. So, you know, it's very, very difficult for those people in that situation to actually develop their skills in that range. So I'm not in favour of sacking people. I am in favour of actually putting the resources and support in place to recognise educating and educators as professionals, and recognising that digital literacy is a really important element of that profession and of being a professional in modern times.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, you know, we would, what Mozilla does, if you didn't see the talk I gave this morning, is a lot of stuff about activating both young people and teachers around digital literacy, including a whole sort of open educational resources program of people, whether they're librarians or in-school teachers or others, writing kind of curriculum on the read, write, participate framework. And a big part of it, I can't remember who it was that said it in the lineup, really is the idea of, certainly on the one hand, universal digital literacy, something that, you know, everybody needs to have, but on the other hand, really embedding it through all other subjects. And so, you know, certainly the approach that we've seen work, and it sounds like a lot of people in this room believe in as well, is digital literacy has to be just, you know, in the same way that writing or math are part of many other subjects. and part of everything we do. But that does actually mean we need, whether it's teachers' colleges or teacher certification programs or professional development or just, how you select for teachers who seek sort of a comprehension of how the digital world is structured, how to wield the digital world, understanding the ethics of the digital world. We need to actually start moving the ball in those things. And so I think one of the things for the next few years that will be a priority for us, I'm interested to work with others on, is how do you advance that thinking and that cause into into those streams, into professional education and into standards and expectations for teachers.
So one of the things I think is really, really important to recognise is the fact that staff aren't all starting at the same place. They're starting at different places with different elements of literacies. And key to that is at scale and at distance, it's very easy to move people who are quite confident up to being super confident or are quite interested in these things, quite comfortable online. It's very easy to provide online information and support and resources and communities to move those people up in their skills and their confidence. What's not easy is to move those people that are at the very, very unconfident end, because they're the people that are not going to go online and read your nice worksheet and join the online community because they're already struggling with quite basic things. And that group of people actually are going to take a lot more resource and a lot more support to move up than the other groups. So I think what I'm saying is that we need to take a nuanced view that, yes, allows for people who are capable of taking advantage of that, but we also need to recognise that some people are not quite there yet too.
Or decide that you just leave
them. Or we can just leave them there. And
so because we had tried to kind of make this a more interactive session, and at least for me, I kind of this morning went through a lot more of the specifics of what we're working on. We decided to kind of do this bigger piece. Certainly, the things you guys expressed fit well with, I think, sort of how I work and how Mozilla works and what Josie's doing as well. The idea that there is a dialogue to be had in this. It's not about traditional pedagogy. It's not about teachers or students. The idea that we do need all teachers to move along at some level, and that there isn't resourcing going to digital literacy in the way that it needs to, that it needs to kind of be a mainstreamed subject. So that I would throw back out to you guys as we've got a last 5 or 10 minutes. Are there either additional things you want to add to the dialogue in terms of ways to advance that agenda, or ask of us in terms of the work that we do? And we do have the microphone boxes.
Yeah, I'll take one over.
Hear me? I'm just wondering about why you go for this rather hard distinction, maybe just for the purpose of this talk, between teachers and students, because it permeates everything really, like non-formal learning, social networking and everything else. And many of the problems, I think, occur because students actually, there's this sort of conceptual dilution where they confuse learning with chattering and this sort of thing. So I think this debate is really important, but goes beyond teachers and learners. But another important point is, it's interesting if you look at the tech industry now. I do a lot. I'm involved in networks in London. There's a big movement to the non-digital. They all do meditation and mindfulness now for an hour in the morning and this sort of thing. No, but there's a very serious thing about time. Time spent online, time spent on the screen. And I don't think it's neither or, but I do think, in a sense, digital literacy needs to understand the need to be non-digital and the need to be more mindful and the need to take more time in human relations that aren't necessarily online. So I think there's those two things I'd like to throw into the mix, which aren't disagreeing. They're saying I think it's a bit more of a complex picture. And I just think it's really funny that all the tech guys do meditation for an hour in the morning. I believe in meditation, but you can't just do it for an hour.
Well, I spend enough time in Silicon Valley that I see lots of those tech people doing mindfulness and meditation, so it is a trend. And I, intentionally, because it was the end of the conference and we used this mechanism, the questions were very binary. I think, I would share, I think Josie shares the kind of, there is a much more nuanced view to all of this stuff. It came out in a lot of the conversation. I guess the thing, for people who are here, work more in formal education, whether it's higher ed or K-12, I'm seeking guidance as I sort of think about Mozilla's policy agenda on some of this stuff, because I think I came from a spot over the last 5-7 years, maybe even longer, more oriented towards not seeing some of the distinctions between teachers or students or informal, formal, and really just seeing the kind of a very holistic picture, which I still do. But at the same time, when I look at how education dollars are spent on whatever level, there just is a huge gap in terms of any resources or any shift in mindset to the kinds of ways we think about the digital world, whether that's the broader ethical stuff or even the kind of production relationship that we would want people to have. So, for me, it is a big, nuanced, holistic thing, but in terms of like how the resources of our society that focus on learning are pointed, they seem just not to be changing or getting worse, with a few exceptions. And where they are changing, I mean, in North America, you see this big CS for all kind of move of trying to get computer science to be a universal high school requirement. It's very, very much different than I think probably most people in this room would think, in that it's really about a loss leader to see who wants to become an engineer. It's not about citizens understanding the digital world or the ethical pieces. And so where resources are shifting in the education spending, they're towards a very narrow priest class of engineers and not towards digital citizenship. So I tend to throw out a little bit more of the teacher-learner schooly language, not because it's my primary interest or even Mozilla's, because I'm really worried that the resources just are not going to shift, and that the resources, as they don't shift, especially in places where we have public schools, if they don't shift, it will be those people who are self-motivated, self-selecting to computer science, have resources, who end up being the haves in society digitally, and we will actually create a bigger divide. So I tend, lots of problems with how education is funded and works, but I tend to push it in that direction because I think we are digging ourselves into a deeper and deeper pit as we either have the wrong conversation or fail to have a conversation at all.
Just commenting, I'll comment on that quickly before we go over. I kind of agree and disagree. So yes, in terms of universal digital citizenship, there is obviously a baseline that we do need to really support, and we need to fund that support, because it is not acceptable to move services online and then not support people to use and access those services. It's completely unacceptable. So there is that piece, but then within the learner and the educator group, there is a huge amount of diversity, and the ways in which, for example, learners who are severely dyslexic or blind using and depend on technologies from more mainstream learners is very, very different, and their experience of the kinds of digital literacies that they're going to need to help them navigate the world and help them take control and ownership of their world are very, very different. Within I'm full of ambition for our educators. I think we should really try and aim as high as possible for them. So our geography teachers do not need to know the same things and the same tools and the same approaches as our history teachers or our home economics teachers. There are specific things that can really, really support them as professionals, but also support them in the specific delivery of their areas as well.
Are there any other questions or interventions? Let's see if I know how to throw. I certainly catch better than I throw.
Hi, this is slightly off a tangent, but in talking about digital literacy, it seems to me part of it is about the user being more mindful and aware of what exactly they're doing online or digitally, and also on the topic of digital citizenship. How can we make sure that the digital citizens themselves are good citizens, however you might define them? And I was just thinking about how a lot of digital interfaces today are very much based on the dogma, don't make me think. I forget who wrote that, but we are taught to, well, those of us who do UX and interface, we're taught to design things so that the user doesn't have to think. It's all automatic. It's all kind of, inherent. Do you suppose we're at a point where we need to start designing interfaces that do make people think and not automatically be induced to click something? And how can we incorporate mindfulness into design?
Can I answer that briefly first, and then I'll let you go for it. So, you nearly got him. Nearly, not quite. Next time. So I don't think that we should hijack the user experience and make it worse just to get people engaged in kind of thinking. I think actually the kind of critical thinking skills sit alongside those kind of things, and I don't think that they're necessarily linked or related. I think personally what's really important at the moment are the kinds of initiatives that are coming up, particularly looking at engaging with extremism and anti-extremism, where we're looking at how to support people in interrogating sources, in finding out whether what they're being told is actually factual, in actually taking a critical approach. And that to me is not to do with the actual presentation of facts. And what I also worry about is that you might have somebody who wants to tell you something terrible, but presenting it in a really nice way so that it'll be easy for you to understand, while we who want people to think more critically are making them wrestle to engage with things.
So I'm going to take a slightly different opinion, which is I don't think we should break things and I don't think it's probably what you're suggesting, or make them worse. But there is actually a conversation we're having with a bunch of other tech companies. I probably will not succeed in this, trying to rally them around how do you actually have an expectation of UX people or product designers that they are building to some degree a more proactive, ethical user education into user interfaces. And right now, it's not that we just don't make people think. I mean, yes, maybe at the day-to-day decision-making level of being a UX designer, there is like reduced friction, and I think that makes sense. But we also do create all kinds of cues and basically mental maps of what is and isn't possible as we design products. And I think if you could get the biggest consumer tech companies and the phone companies working on moving the digital literacy bar in society, they can, and this is the thing I've been trying to make happen for a couple of years. I think we may get some progress on it. There are ways, whether they're through marketing, whether they're through UX design, a bunch of other things, that they could move the bar in society on digital literacy much faster than the school system ever could with huge amounts of money. So we didn't really talk about it here, think that designers and product companies have potentially a role. And it's as simple as, in a phone recharge shop in Kenya, having posters that explain some basic things about, what people can do with their smartphone. We've done a bunch of ethnographic research, and other people do as well, where you'll walk up to somebody who's got their first smartphone in different parts of Africa or Asia. We've done studies in both. Other people have done similar studies. And you say, do you use the internet on that phone? And the response you'll get very, very often is, well, what's the internet? And so as we get to the 6 billion people who have smartphones or who have internet, like really their mental model of what's possible is often quite limited. And if you imagined, posters in phone recharge shops just saying, a little bit about what you can do on the internet, they'll probably sell more data, so there's an economic upside, but there's a chance for them to really help people have a different mental model of what's possible. And the same is true of design of consumer internet products. I mean, the whatever is it called, Facebook Zero now, the free basics, the internet.org Facebook thing, that you get free internet access, but only for a certain set of websites in a lot of countries in the world. Certainly that is creating a mental model of the internet as 10 websites or 20 websites. I think it would be ethical of Facebook to build in education about what exists beyond those walls, in the user experience. So I think there is a tremendous amount to be done in the place you're asking, and certainly hope that we can push it. The flip side, I do agree with the critical thinking piece, right? And I wanted to say this just in response to some of the stuff in that last spectrogram. It isn't just being critical about the actual information on the internet, although that is a clear thing. That's not new for digital literacy. Like, people do need to know what's bullshit and what's not. I think the other piece is some level of understanding of what's going on, which does go back to the UX kind of stuff. It's hard to imagine how we do this as a whole society, but really does feel important. And that, at the one level I'm talking about people understanding, whether the key is green and red in their URL browser bar and whether their banking information is safe. You obviously want those kind of things. But if you saw Alex's slide this morning on, that there was more Facebook traffic to fake news articles from Russian bots than to real news, like overall in the whole election. That is about not just being able to detect whether the information is bullshit, but understanding how the system is rigged or how the system works, which then does get back to product design. So I think there also are some critical issues in here of people understanding like what forces shape our experience of digital life that are going to be really, really important and are actually about some critical thinking skills. Okay, last man with the hand up, and then we're out of here. Oh, I was hoping you'd pass it on. And I can't aim.
Yeah, so, on the internet, I can write anything I want, I can, read anything I want, join groups that believe whatever I want to believe, right? And those things, what?
In most countries, yes.
Yeah. And you would say that that is an advantage of the internet. Like, that is something that you would say is a plus, right?
So,
go ahead.
I certainly wouldn't say that I certainly wouldn't want to say that I believe that there's somebody in every country who is the person who should judge what can and can't be viewed in that country. So yes, I think access to information and access to
basically like the ideas
really
behind
important.
the internet is like openness and self-expression and all of that. So
are you leading to another question, or is that?
Yeah.
Okay. That's why I didn't answer.
Wasn't a question yet. Yeah.
Because I think the answer is things are changing.
Yeah, and don't you think that those things, they intrinsically create different opinions and different beliefs that a lot of people are not going to agree with? Because, like on the internet, it's not like before the internet where there were editors that, like more centralized control of information. Now the internet generates these things, but now, like it is partially also responsible for killing newspapers, for whether it's good or not, I don't know. But now we're saying, oh, but wait a second. Actually, it's become too free and self-expressive, like, oh, there's a Brexit, so, oh, stop, that is not the self-expression that we want.
So what's the question part of it?
Is like,
are we being hypocrites?
Is there too much freedom?
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Well, I can answer, are we being hypocrites? Thank you. Do you want to go first?
In terms of that, I think there's a strong line to be drawn. I think that what has shifted is that a lot of people have been very encouraged by things that have happened recently and feel that it's actually more acceptable to say things that were previously they were more shy of saying. I think there is clear lines to be drawn, though, between freedom of speech and actual abuse and prejudice and hate speech. There's very, very clear lines, and I think it comes back really to your conception of freedom and whether you believe that it's permissible to threaten other people's freedom in expressing your own. And, so for me, it's a lot of a lot of what gets shouted about in terms of freedom of speech may actually be just abuse. But the person who's being abusive is basically hiding behind a banner of, well, it's freedom of speech, so I can say whatever I like. Well, actually, no, and that's what I'm. But I totally agree that we shouldn't. You know, and that's why I think freedom is important, because people should have forums to be able to disagree with each other, and you should be able to disagree with people without those people being just banned for things. But I do believe that there are limits to, you know, to that. If you're inciting racial hatred, then that's not about freedom of speech anymore.
So I can see people jumping up to go, so I'm going to wrap us up. But I do love, are you a hypocrite, as the last question of the day. And I guess, you know, I certainly would agree with what Josie said. I guess for me, it's why often I and Mozilla more broadly really are kind of talking more and more that we're at a pretty important inflection point with the internet, and we'll be at other ones. But we certainly believe in that, you know, the internet is a system for free expression, as an open platform for everybody. And I think, you know, at the same time, you get new problems that come with that. And so if you're a believer in democracy or openness on the internet or the free market or whatever, you still actually have to look at what the problems are that emerge. And so, you know, whether it's Brexit or Trump or whatever, technical systems around, we have created a problem with filter bubbles that we now have to understand and look at, where the people who disagree with each other hide, and you know, it's broken the function of democracy, whether you like those outcomes or not. Like, that's well documented now. So we've created a different problem. That doesn't mean that that system of open and free expression isn't good. It means we actually have to say, okay, well, how do we manage a world of filter bubbles? But I think even more so, and it is why digital literacy matters for regular citizens, for our politicians, for our media, we've also created a situation where how the internet expresses itself is much more and more controlled by bots and people who have non-discursive interests and are just actually trying to mine attention. And that is like a real thing, and is not about free expression. It's actually about a bunch of other affects that come from the open system. Again, it's like up to us to understand those. You know, if you just look at Walt Mossberg from the Wall Street Journal piece, you know, the other day, you know, Mark Zuckerberg can and should fix fake news. I mean, it's a part of the algorithm. It's not a part of people being stupid. All right. Well, thank you all for making it through this last session. Hopefully we entertained. You certainly engaged us in an interesting way.
Thank you.